Justin Ellis here with complegends.com, and we proceed through the Fittest Experience. We kind of went backwards here, but we're going to go through 22.1 today, and that is for all those lifters, your opportunity to get heavy. In today's episode, of course, we're going to have our obvious overreactions. We're going to dive as deep as we can into this one, and then also predictions for this. So, with that being said, let's go right into the obvious overreactions of this workout. So for max load, 3-rep max front squat, time cap is 10 minutes. Typically in these kind of workouts, unless it was performed on location, the time cap is not really too relevant. So you can repeat this as many times and start over as many times. So let's take a look at our obvious overreactions. And I'm going to say right out the gate, number one obvious overreaction is have a backup plan, or maybe you can call it a safety net. You know, I think we all kind of have a concept of what our lift is going to look like. And this backup plan or safety net really turns into being kind of like the first lift that we're going to try and get on the board. We just got to make sure this is on the board. So that is obvious reaction number one. Obvious reaction number two, hit it before you stick it. Now, before you interpret that the wrong way, in warm up, you should, let's say your goal is 200 pounds, but your fallback, your must have is 185 pounds. You should perform that 185 before you even start the clock, you know. And you have the opportunity here too. They're not even saying you got to start with an empty barbell or a clean barbell. You can warm up, hit that weight prior to even starting the clock, get some confidence, and then go into it. So don't waste an opportunity of that 10 minutes on not knowing. And this is also a weight that is not your goal weight, so it should be, you can hit it and take some rest, don't get me wrong, but it should be done before you start. And I think that's something like a tip that's a little more necessary when you're on location. If this was at TFX and they had a lift off like this, that would definitely be a lot more important. Here you could you know, if you were unsuccessful or didn't feel good, you can start the clock over. But I'm still going to go with that approach that I need to hit that whatever weight is before I start the clock. Number three obvious overreaction for this one is teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, and what we're talking about here is, you know, if you're doing teams, especially, but anybody in the box, your own boxes, you know, have a support team, have a support crew there to cheer you on through that third rep. That's going to be the most difficult, I'm sure. And yeah, sometimes it's like kind of when that clock goes, that 3, 2, 1 countdown happens, and you've got some people around you, and maybe you're all doing it together at the same time. But I think it's important to have kind of your team support group to be right next to you in the thick of things, and give you that little extra adrenaline to pump you up right through there at the end. Now, if we're talking about diving pretty deep into this one, I don't think there's a whole lot deeper to dive. As far as like, don't change anything up. You know, when you're in the competition, you've been training for the competition. That's when you test things out. Now you've trained, you've tested, and it's time to perform. So when it comes to stuff like, should I use my lifters? Should I not use my lifters? Well, did you train that way? You know, give yourself the best opportunity. What have you been doing? This is probably not the time to say, well, now I'm going to try my lifters, even though the whole cycle, the previous lifting cycle, I didn't even use lifters. So, you know, wrist wraps. Do you use wrist wraps off the rack for front squats? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but probably stick with what you've been training for or training with, and materials and products and all that stuff. You know, if you don't take pre-workout, I probably wouldn't throw that in the mix. Your warm-up routines, you know, those things you want to keep consistent when it comes to performance, because your focus should be on the performance and not necessarily changing up a whole lot in a you know, don't get me wrong, from attempt to attempt, there might be some changes and modifications. You want to be able to adapt, but little things that are probably a little more mental than they are in your overall physical success. But as far as that, dive in deep into it. I think also this is probably in a 10-minute time frame, three attempts at most. Your fallback or your for sure lift is number one right there when the clock starts. And then based on how that felt, let's say again we're going to that 200 model. That's what we want. We want the 200 pound lift. If that 185 felt really, really light, maybe there's an opportunity to go that 205, 210. If it didn't feel very great, there's also a chance to adapt to maybe, and I'm going to 195 at this point. I'm not real sure. Now, the cool thing is there's that potential for the third lift, and that you hit the 195 and it felt a little bit better for some reason. And now here's your chance to hit that 200 or 205. If say you went to the 205 and you didn't make it, there's your third attempt back down to the 200, which was the goal to begin with. But I think outside of that, with the time frame, because you should be taking a few minutes in between the lifts here, this should not be volume. And if it becomes about volume, then we probably need to stop and refocus on potentially a different day to do this and recoup, or at least a couple hours or an hour or so to reattempt this. You don't want to turn this into a endurance lift or a volume lift. Who can continue to build? You should know what you're trying to attack and attack it. So I don't know if that's a whole lot deeper than that. Now what's cool is I'm going to take you over here to the leaderboards of what's up right now. So recording this on Friday morning, we do have an opportunity to look at some of the numbers that have been plugged in. And so here's the men's Pro RX division. We see the top of the leaderboard at 367, quite a bit of 300s, not a lot of scores in, didn't expect to. I mean, you got to think at this phase, it's day number 2, and a lot of people don't want to throw out there what you got to beat, and that's fair. And some people like to throw their scores in, especially if they feel like they did the best they could. Why not? Let's see where we land. Let's look at it. Women's pro. And I've noticed that the women's RX division is way stingier with releasing any of that information. So be prepared for those scores to come in pretty late. But 195, I'll show you why that's good. That's a great lift. But if you look, we'll go straight to women's intermediate scale. Then you can see right off the top, we've got some 200s already in that division. So I expect the RX to potentially be a little heavier than that. What you do find, though, funny enough, in the intermediate to the pros is that you do have some athletes that are a little more specialized one side or the other, and that's why they're not in the RX. So sometimes in these intermediate divisions, you do see some of the bigger lifts, or at least up there. And you're like, why aren't they, Pro RX? Well, they're not very successful, let's say, pull-ups, or their cardio is just not there. Then we look at the men's intermediate, 365. So again, you see someone matching pretty much what men's Pro RX has already got up on the board with 365. So don't know the individuals here, don't know the makeup, but that's going to lead us into our predictions for this workout. And what I'm leaning towards overall seeing in this one is probably going to be something. I'm going to go on the men's side, 405. Somebody's going to put up a 405, 3-rep front squat. They might be a specialist, but nonetheless, I think it's going to happen. And on the women's side, I think we're going to see something upwards at around 265 for 3 on the women's side. And again, they could be specialists, they may not qualify, but it's going to definitely help their chances if they take that number 1 kind of spot. So that's my predictions as of right now. Let me know in the comment box or below or wherever you're seeing this. Just message what you think the top lift is going to be, even based on what we've seen so far. And I'd also like to know how you're doing. Well, it doesn't get much more in depth than that, I don't think, on front squatting. So Outside of that, don't forget you can check out other content like this. We're going to have the other coverage of, you see there, we've got 21.2 already up. This is 21.1, and we're going to soon have 21.3, the big nasty one. And I've got some good numbers on that to hopefully get you to the time that you're looking for. Also, you can find us at complegends.com. And here we put up weekly challenges, weekly workouts. This week we use the TFX workout as our weekly challenge. Why not? So it's a good one. The dumbbell and pull up one there. You can see there we are on Spotify and other podcasting players, and of course YouTube. We do the video of the podcast. So love talking about workouts, love breaking them down, and love to debate as well. I think there's always room for improvement in fitness and education and all that good stuff. And so this is just me spitting out my first takes. We'll see how it all ends up. Until then, let's be legends, and good luck in TFX.